you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's a pleasure to follow the honourable member for Westmoreland and Lonsdale, who made a very passionate speech. Madam Deputy Speaker, the health of our housing market is an indicator of the health of our whole economy. Buying a property or moving house doesn't just involve the exchange of money, the transfer of deeds. It also supports other associated industries, as has been said widely already, a large number of jobs in many trades, such as plumbers, builders and electricians. During the acute phase of COVID-19, many sectors of our economy were forced to grind to a halt, including the housing market, where in May 2020 property transactions were down by 50%. Other sectors have received welcome relief on a sectoral basis by this government's measures to boost our economy, such as grants for the retail, leisure and hospitality businesses and the Eat Out to Help Out scheme that was announced last week. So the housing market also needs a stimulus to catalyse its restart, and so I welcome this temporary relief to stamp duty land tax, which will do just that. In normal times, when the market is in equilibrium, stamp duty should be paid just like any other tax. But right now, as we emerge from a period of sharp decline in housing sales, the market is far from equilibrium, and it's right to take most property purchases out of stamp duty, encouraging transactions to return to normal levels. A cut to stamp duty is, of course, a response to the COVID-19 economic slowdown, but it's also the first of many measures that this government will introduce to fix our housing crisis. Any action to reduce the cost of moving will be welcome to my constituents in Penistone and Stocksbridge, where, as elsewhere in the country, many local people can't afford to own their own home or to move up the property ladder as their family grows. Parents and grandparents are worried that the next generation will not be able to afford to stay local, instead having to leave our towns and villages and our wonderful communities. Whilst the measure we're debating today will provide a welcome short-term reduction to the cost of moving, it will also encourage older people to downsize, releasing larger properties for growing families. And the Honourable Lady for Mitcham and Morden opposite rightly said earlier that there are many properties outside of London and the South East that may not necessarily benefit from this cut, but actually, even though the average prices are a lot less, in Penistone and Stocksbridge, I think the average house sale last September was £172,000. At the top of the chain, there always is a property that is subject to stamp duty land tax. Absolutely. And they're often the properties that are hardest to shift and take longest to sell. And actually, any reduction to the price of those properties to get them moving, to get them shifted, will affect the whole chain right down to the bottom, to the first-time buyer. So as well as being a short-term measure to restart the housing market, there's also strong consensus across the House that to fix our housing market in the longer term, we must build more homes. So I'm pleased that this government intends to bring in reforms to our planning system that will enable more houses to be built more quickly. This is particularly necessary in cities like Sheffield, where the local authority still has no local plan, or even a draft local plan, which means there's no evidence-based understanding or consensus around where and what types of housing should be built, putting greenfield sites in danger when brownfield sites are still available. We need to increase the supply of housing, and evidence suggests we need to build over 300,000 new homes each year, both to keep up with demand and to address the backlog. We're all aware that there has been a sharp increase in the number of young people who are living with their parents, a rise of nearly 50% in 20 years, in many cases because there are not enough affordable homes available, as has already been said. So the government's housing reforms and the Prime Minister's £12 billion affordable homes programme will rightly address this issue and give young people the opportunity to own their own homes with all the benefits of security, pride and a feeling of rootedness that home ownership brings. But I want to take a moment to consider another, less welcome reason for the increase in demand for housing. Over the last 2 decades, the number of people living alone in the UK has risen by 20%, and the number of 45 to 64-year-olds living alone has increased by 53% over the same period. One of the principal reasons for this increase is the number of middle-aged men who are now living on their own, largely as a result of relationship breakdown. When marriages and partnerships end, one household becomes 2. Property costs can double. Children no longer have the benefit of both parents under one roof. And for those adults, often fathers, left living alone, loneliness and its associated effects on well-being can follow. Of course, it's inevitable that not all marriages and cohabiting relationships will last, And when there is irretrievable breakdown, new households must be formed. But if relationship breakdown is one of the key drivers for housing demand, then we must address the causes of these breakdowns, not because of the impact on housing, but because of the impact on people. Relationship breakdown is costly, emotionally, psychologically, financially, and it has a huge impact on children. As we look to address one of the UK's greatest challenges, a lack of housing, let's also focus our efforts on addressing another one and consider how government, local authorities, the voluntary and faith sectors and local communities can better support couples and families to stay together. Throughout this crisis, my Right Honourable friend the Chancellor's timely measures have acted as a shock absorber, lessening the impact of the most significant economic event of modern times. This temporary relief to stamp duty will give the housing market a much-needed boost and pave the way to deeper, more long-term and more holistic reforms to end our housing crisis.
Anthony Higham.